Hello, it's Scott Manley here with Asteroid Day Live, and right now I'm here with main man from B612 Foundation, Ed. So what does the B612 Foundation do?
We are dedicated to protecting the Earth from being hit by large asteroids. And so that means really helping find, track, map, and discover where all these asteroids are and where they're going, trying to help with the process of understanding what you can do when you find something that might be coming close to the Earth. And this is, I don't want to give the impression we're the only ones doing this, because we're not. This is really a worldwide effort, but we've been at the forefront of this for quite a number of years, and I think we've been an integral part of this whole planetary movement to protect the Earth from being hit by asteroids, and it's moving very fast right now. I think we're at the beginning of a very exciting time.
So what projects have the B612 been doing recently?
Most recently, we've been working on something called the Asteroid Decision and Mapping Project, which really means taking the data coming in from other telescopes operated by NASA or the National Science Foundation or worldwide, and helping to understand what the orbits are of these asteroids in a way that scales up for the kinds of observations we're going to get in the next few years, which is going to be absolutely massive. A factor of 10 increase over what we have today. And so that means we're going to have to do different ways of computing and dealing with this data set.
Because right now we're over at like 750,000 known asteroids, and you're obviously interested in NEAs. How many are we talking about?
Well, NEAs, for those who don't know, means near-Earth asteroids, and those are asteroids not in the asteroid belt, but ones which can approach the orbit of Earth. And so those in particular, there is at least 1 million of those that are large enough to destroy a city should they hit one. So there's at least 1 million of them that we care about.
Okay. Well, thanks, Ed. We're going to go over to Lisa Burke in the studio.
Thank you very much. And we're going to now talk about space resources utilization and the frameworks that need to be put in place. Wonderful panel. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time on Asteroid Day. And Frans, we're going to start with you, actually, because you are part of a bigger, overarching framework authority. So tell us about your work and how everything fits together in this jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself a framework authority, but as an academic, we do discuss the international framework for undertaking any activities in outer space, in particular also by private enterprise. And space mining is, of course, a good example thereof. So the most fundamental obligation there is for states to authorize and continuously supervise whatever private space activities are taking place, because they will be held, the states will be held responsible and liable for it. So that's kind of the framework within which then, amongst others, Luxembourg has created its own national law specifically dedicated to private space mining endeavors.
And Mathias, I'm going to jump right to you because, of course, you are one of the two voices of Luxembourg here. So from your perspective and in your role, Luxembourg has really been leading the way very strongly compared to other countries in trying to figure out legal frameworks.
Absolutely. We launched in 2016, in February 2016, the SpaceResources.lu initiative, where we aim to contribute to the peaceful exploration and sustainable utilization of space resources. And we try to really promote this as an overall topic, addressing many different aspects, research and development, international, legal, and among others, legal and regulatory aspects. And so this is absolutely key. And as Frans mentioned, we are one of the very first countries with a dedicated law that addresses this topic, amongst others, the authorization and supervision. But at the same time, we engage very heavily on an international level at the United Nations and in other multilateral fora to find a longer-term solution to address this.
Jean-Louis, your role as a former cabinet minister and lawyer, you're also from Luxembourg, I believe. So tell us about what you think of how Luxembourg has achieved what it has achieved in just 3 years.
Well, I think that the initiative was at the forefront of innovation in a certain number of respects. First of all, the government being the first government around the world to really embrace the notion of space resources, also from a business perspective, but also from a technical perspective. And second, together with the US, putting in place on both sides of the Atlantic, separate regimes, but nevertheless national regimes, which clarify the situation as regards ownership of space resources, which in my eyes was an essential step, which shows that lawyers can also be innovative. Legislators can be innovative because it is a law that has been passed by Parliament, and that actually creates the foundation for the international development my friends were just talking about. Now, there's no national law at the end of the day who's going to prevail over another, and that national law, to put it in simple terms, is not going to do the trick by itself, but we need all sorts of these small little initiatives nationally to end up having this global initiative coming to fruition. Because if we wait until the global idea ends up in an international convention, I think we would wait very long. So I think that Luxembourg gave an essential push here also.
It's very interesting to think about law being in this kind of white sheet space where you can make up the rules as you go along, but you have to think very carefully about what those rules should be and what one should focus on to encourage new businesses. And you've come, Carlos, from iSpace. So what brought you to Luxembourg?
Okay, thanks for the question. And so first of all, I was working for the mining industry for more than 10 years in strategic mine planning. So I was looking at the financial side of things, economical side of things, and so on. One of the very important things for the mining industry is to have some sort of a framework that can back them up before they can make an investment. For instance, not just mining industry, but oil and gas industries. Before they can spend millions of dollars in exploration, they need to have some sort of a license for them to go and explore. And once they have that license, which is just given for a certain time of period of time, then they can make the decision if investing in extraction. But for that, they need to get some sort of a lease. So some of the stuff that we need to work here in Luxembourg or in the world is finding how we can offer exploration licenses to the industry for them to invest and leases for them to extract. If we cannot offer that type of backup to the industry, then they will not have the confidence to maybe venture in bigger amounts in the space industry. Now, going back to the first question, when I came back to Luxembourg, I'm working on a framework which is called the Lunar Ore Standards. And on Earth, there's a standard code for mining and one standard code for oil and gas. And these standard codes are for investors, for them to have a standard on how to read exploration results, resources, and reserves. So what we need to get somehow is as well a standard code to be able to report exploration results from space, resources, and reserves. And that's one of the works I'm doing at the moment. Yeah.
There's so many fascinating areas to think of, and they're all so specific, and they all kind of become this infrastructure one-on-one from the ground upwards out into space. And with your academic mind on, what do you think are the most important things within setting legislation and frameworks that one should focus on globally for the next 5 years? Because this is a global endeavor.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I think there is a need to establish some sort of globally acceptable framework for it. And I mean, the previous conversation also, already pointed out to that. It doesn't help if you have just two countries having a law and everywhere else it's up for grabs. So one problem which comes from the law as it is that it doesn't give us that much clues. You mentioned the word lease. Part of what international law currently prohibits is for countries like Luxembourg or the United States to simply say, this asteroid is part of our national territory, so we can simply determine who has the right to go there and mine the resources. No, it's international territory. So you need some form of an international framework to agree that individual countries can actually license private operators to go there. And so far, the United States and Luxembourg are leading the way. There are more countries likely to follow suit within the next few years. But there are also countries, unfortunately, who disagree with this interpretation of international law. So there's still a lot of political wheeling and dealing to be done before we get a sort of harmonized, uniform legal understanding on the global scale.
So can both of you, from the Luxembourg vantage point, tell us about any of that background wheeling and dealing that has to be done in order to lead the way, to pave the way? Or have you had anybody come to you and say, no, we disagree fundamentally with what you're doing as a country?
I would say the good news is that it's definitely making progress in the right direction. A few years ago, this was a very controversial topic. And if you look at the United Nations, for example, there are now much less negative voices. And there's really an effort now ongoing with a dedicated working group that will look into this more formal international framework. In parallel, there's also a very good effort undertaken by a working group based in the Netherlands, in The Hague, that works on a set of building blocks that might form a future basis for an international framework, and that looks at all kinds of different things like priority rights, non-interference. How do you manage really very practically these activities, especially when there are several countries or several companies that want to go to exactly the same spot and try to find the same resource there. So it will take time for sure. It's a very complex topic. And in the end, what we have said also in Luxembourg is that you cannot solve it right now from one day to the next. You have to proceed one by one, step by step. And we have taken a very important step in Luxembourg and are also engaging internationally for a longer term solution to this.
Just thinking about it as you speak as well, it makes me feel that there's a divide when it comes from the science moving over to the business side and then the countries. So you probably see that a lot within trying to think about law. So your perspective?
I don't think that there's a divide here. I think that more and more people understand that actually the global legal framework that was in place in the 60s is a framework that simply cannot be applied today anymore, because that framework was against the background of the Cold War then, where the main subject was whether states want to appropriate asteroids or other parts of the space. Nowadays, there's a whole paradigm change, because this is about commercial use. And echoing what Mathias just said, we see more and more countries following the path. And if I'm looking at it from the academic side of things, I'm a professor at Luxembourg University as well. You have two professors sitting here who are telling you that their interpretation of international law, to put it in very simple terms, is yes, that space resources are capable of being appropriated. There's a few left who do not share this view, but more and more agree that something needs to happen at the international level, you know, because we're all fundamentally convinced that there's going to be a commercial exploration and commercial exploitation of space and resources in particular. And once that is your starting point, you cannot just lay back and say, oh, no, it's not going to work, or I'm going to see how it plays out, you know, because then it's going to be El Dorado or something like that, and I don't think that that is going to it. Incidentally, the principles on which we are basing the concept of national laws that provide for a clause that, yes, resources are capable of being appropriated by companies and by corporates, is actually based on very old rules of international law, where an analogy is being done, and that is basically the analogy with the fish in the sea. Yes, you cannot own the sea, but once you catch the fish, it's yours, basically. And if you look at the civil code countries, Luxembourg being a civil code country, if you look at the scholars that have commented on the civil code during the 19th century, they're exactly saying the same thing in relation to the sea and the fish. So this is not totally new, and I'm sure there are other examples in other legal systems.
Yes, but we won't go down the sea, the ocean. Yes, but we're going up, exactly. Although I know that not everything is completely smooth when it comes to fisheries and the law around that, particularly with Brexit and things. But that's a completely different conversation. Final word to you, Carlos. Listening to this and the frameworks in place, for the next 5 years, how fast do you think this should happen in order for the businesses and the startups to be able to do what they want to do?
Right. So I think it's along the lines of what Mathias was saying before. The Hague working group, which is working on the building blocks. They're working around the concept of safety zones, which is kind of an exploration lease, and the priority rights, which is kind of the concept of an extraction lease as well. So if we can be fast in creating that framework, then we will provide the base for the private industry to get more confidence in investing bigger quantities and reducing the risk, if you like. So then we really need to provide that support to these groups that are going on the direction of the UN. So at the end, it needs to go that way.
Gentlemen, thank you all so much for your time, your expertise. And now over to you, Solomon.
Thank you. Joining me now is Nicolas from Latvia. Hi, Nicolas.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, nice to meet you.
Okay. Nicolas, can you please let us know what you guys there in Latvia are doing for Asteroid Day?
Well, yes, the Museum of Meteorites in Riga, Latvia, have joined the global Asteroid Day movement already from its very beginning in 2015. Okay. So we are very glad to take part and to be part of and celebrate the 5th anniversary of the Asteroid Day. Well, since then, we have started to organize the special events on the 30th of July for all general public and of all ages and all educational levels, in fact, starting from kids and ending with professors. So it's a nice community. We come together, we have lectures, and we discuss things, and especially about, of course, asteroids and meteorites these. So I think it's really impressive for many people to touch such things which have traveled through the Earth like for billions of years, and then came to Earth, and you can really feel its space spirit.
Amazing. Thank you, Nicolas. Thank you so much. I wish you all a good success and have a great time there in Latvia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Asteroid Day.
Thank you. Happy Asteroid Day to you. Okay, over to you, Christine.
Thank you. I'm here with Patrick Helminger. He's an astronomer, but he's also responsible for the Fireball Station here in Luxembourg. Patrick, what is a Fireball Station?
A Fireball Station is a special machine where you actually have a mirror, and above you have a camera mounted, and it takes one picture each night of the whole sky. So we see bright shooting stars coming in, they leave a streak on our film, and we can analyze them. We own about 30 of these cameras all across Europe, and if we switch the data together, we manage to get an orbit of the objects that came in, and we even might find a meteorite, as we're working across an area of about 1 million square kilometers here in Europe.
That sounds really cool. Do you remember any specific highlights over the past few years?
I would say the biggest highlight was surely the find of the Neuschwanstein meteorite in 2002, where quite a few stations in southern Germany picked up the object coming in, and they could be put together, and we got the information of the actual area where it was supposed to have landed. We sent in a search party, and we found the meteorite. So now we have the hands-on object, we can do chemistry on it, and we know the orbit, and we even know the parent body in the solar system where it comes from.
I feel like I'm living in the future already, but this is still the present. So what do you foresee in the future for this Fireball Station?
Our Fireball Station here in Grevels, here in Luxembourg, will surely be digitalized. We have already quite a few of these stations in Czech Republic and a few in Germany, and they get much more exact data, and we're supposed to find much more meteorites in the near future, as we even can tell whether there was a meteorite fall or not, and just to send a search party in. We have found one last year, and I think this will be a big step forward for our system.
Thank you, Patrick. Back to you with a message from astronaut Tim Peake.
Hi, I'm ESA astronaut Tim Peake, back home from the International Space Station and wishing everybody a happy Asteroid Day. When living in space, the subject of asteroids is one that's quite close to our hearts. The space station's been specially shielded against what we call micrometeoroids and orbital debris. But even so, after more than 17 years in orbit, it's collected a number of small holes and craters and even suffered damage to the windows. Planet Earth's been in orbit a lot longer, around 4.5 billion years, and it's had its fair share of dings in that time. We can see many asteroid impact craters around the world with our own eyes. For example, the Awarunga impact crater in Chad is one that I photographed, which looks like a giant bullseye in the middle of the desert. So we know that asteroids have hit Earth before and will do so again in the future. So we need to know more about asteroids and to investigate what can be done to safeguard Earth if one was detected coming towards us. One of the ways we're doing this is through missions like ESA's Asteroid Impact Mission, which will learn all it can about a small asteroid and then track it whilst NASA's Double Asteroid Redirect test attempts to deflect its orbit. So, all the best for Asteroid Day. There's only one Earth, so let's do all we can to protect it.
Thank you. Guillaume is still with us, and we've been joined by Justine, who will be helping us with this next experiment. We're standing in front of a large sandbox. What's going to happen?
This is a special sandbox, Cordula. This is an augmented reality sandbox. The way it works is the following. You're creating a landscape out of sand, and then an infrared system on top of it detects the altitude of the hills and project contour lines on top of it. Let's say this is an asteroid. This is a heavy wooden ball, and let's drop it from the sky to see how it will shape the surface.
Well, that's created a jolly good crater, I'd say.
Oh, absolutely. Let's take a look. If we remove the asteroid, well, we see this hemispherical surface. And the reason why we don't see so many craters on the surface of the Earth is because we have a lot of erosion. And this is something we can also sort of simulate here. By putting your fist on top of the surface, you can have rain falling on the surface. And this is what Justine is doing right now at this moment. Putting more water so we can create a high altitude lake. And then by breaking the dam, we can have water flow back to the sea.
Okay, so this essentially helps you understand the topography of the Earth and the impact that an asteroid could have on our planet.
And the way the landscape is shaped in after many years.
Thank you, Justine, for helping us with that. And with that, we go back to you, Natalie.
Thank you, Cordula. As you can see, we are still standing in front of Matt Dawson's fantastic telescope, and Yanis from the Lycée Almazinde has joined us now. Matt, how do you discover an asteroid?
Well, I take this CCD camera mounted on the telescope instead of the eyepiece, and this telescope has a motor drive that follows the stars. And you take an image of the sky, of a patch of sky, and you take another image of the same patch of sky a few minutes later, and you're looking for something that's moved, because asteroids move and stars don't. And when you find something that moved, you know that that's the asteroid.
Why is it so important to discover asteroids?
Well, the main reason, of course, which is why we're all here today, is because of the risk of an asteroid hitting the Earth. And in order to do something about that, we have to know exactly where it is in order to calculate the orbit. And there's a network of amateur astronomers who, when the professionals discover an asteroid, they follow it up. But the other reason is we can tell an awful lot about the birth of the solar system from studying asteroids. And also, recently, an asteroid called Oumuamua passed through the solar system, and that actually came from another star system. And if we could bring back a sample from one of these asteroids from an alien star system, we could actually, well, study the soil from another system.
And that will be so, so amazing and exciting. Yanis, you have also a question for Matt.
Yes, so what do you do when you discover an asteroid? Is there a process or?
Well, yes, when you discover an asteroid or when you follow up the orbit of one that's already known, you compare the positions that you measure to a database, and if it's not in the database, it's a new one. And then you send the results by email to the Minor Planet Center in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is extremely important because they're the organization that correlates all the data from professionals and amateurs worldwide and calculates the orbits. And if they, or if JPL or any of the other, or NASA, any of the other organizations, if they find one that's on a collision course with Earth, hopefully we will have many years in order to figure out what we can do about it.
So this is all very interesting, and we'll hear about the experiment that Yanis and Noah are doing at the Lycée Armezinde in our next segment, and back to RTL City for now.
Who better to rock our world than Dr. Brian May, astrophysicist and legendary guitarist of Queen, who co-founded Asteroid Day. Asteroid Day Live is the only programming dedicated to introducing you to many of the most prominent asteroid experts in the world. We learn by listening to them share their personal experiences and knowledge of how our solar system was formed, how it is evolving, and how we can protect our beautiful blue planet. But this programming wouldn't be possible without the generous support of major sponsors, including the government of Luxembourg and you. You play a critical role in our ability to shine a bright spotlight on the leading work of astronomers, engineers, scientists, space mission operators, and astronauts, our global rock stars, who bring the topic of asteroids closer to people of all ages and remind our government leaders of the importance of funding planetary science. Asteroids play an important role in our lives, from the formation of our solar system to their extraordinary value for future resource utilization, to enabling ongoing exploration of our solar system, and finally, when they impact our home planet. Asteroid Day is more than just a broadcast program. It's thousands of independently organized events in 192 countries. These events are the heart and soul of Asteroid Day, as they connect and engage students on the subject of asteroids. For many students across the world, Asteroid Day is their only opportunity to listen to, learn from, and to meet astronomers, astrophysicists, and astronauts, heroes of the STEM generation. Your support enables the growth of our network of independent event organizers, so more events can take place. It allows us to not only encourage the future generation of scientists, but to grow our online library of educational tools, enabling more people to dig deeper into asteroids and to connect to scientists, observers, and astronauts. Your support enables us to meet the goals of the United Nations Office for the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space Affairs by generating awareness of what we can do to protect our planet. Please consider becoming part of this movement by donating to Asteroid Day today.